During World War II, a small Japanese island called Okinoshima hid one of history's darkest secrets. It wasn't on maps, and few people knew it even existed. This island housed a facility that produced thousands of tons of chemical weapons, like mustard gas and tear gas. Workers in hazmat suits moved through the buildings, often unaware that the substances they handled were slowly poisoning them. Fast forward to 1971, 8 white laboratory rabbits were released onto this island with a haunting past. These weren't survivors of chemical tests. Those rabbits were long gone. Instead, this new group unknowingly sparked a transformation that no one could have seen coming. Back in 1925, Japan signed the Geneva Protocol, agreeing to ban the use of chemical weapons. But instead of sticking to the rules, they quietly began developing them in secret. They needed a hidden location, somewhere isolated but still accessible, and Okinoshima was the perfect fit. At just 2.5 miles around, the island was tiny and remote enough to avoid attention, yet close to military ports and railroad lines for easy transport. In 1929, construction began on one of Japan's most secretive projects. The island literally disappeared, removed from maps and shrouded in secrecy. Workers were sworn to silence with threats of imprisonment if they ever talked. Many didn't even realize they were working with chemical weapons until they started getting sick. Between 1929 and 1945, the facility produced over 6,000 tons of poison gas, including mustard and tear gas. After the war ended, U.S. forces discovered the facility. But instead of using it as evidence, they destroyed all the documents related to Japan's chemical weapons program. The buildings were stripped, the equipment was scrapped, and for decades, Okinoshima's dark history was buried. Workers went home with their secrets and their scars. Over 6,000 people worked there, and many suffered long-term health problems, blisters on their skin, respiratory issues, and more. For years, their stories went untold. Japan didn't even officially acknowledge the facility's existence until 1988. Meanwhile, the island was left to decay. The empty buildings stood as grim reminders of its past. Few tourists visited, and those who did, it came for the ruins, not wildlife. The only permanent residents were caretakers at a small inn built to attract visitors to the island's stunning beaches. But nature had other plans. Grass pushed through cracks in the concrete. Trees slowly reclaimed the land, and then, in 1971, the rabbits arrived, 8 of them released without much thought. What happened next changed the island's story forever. This is where the story takes a turn, one that's both fascinating and a little controversial. There are several competing theories about how rabbits first came to Okinoshima, and each has its own passionate defenders. Let's start with the most popular version. In 1971, a group of elementary school students on a field trip released 8 laboratory rabbits onto the island. Sounds innocent enough, right? But wait, there are other stories. Some locals claim that when the chemical weapons facility shut down, test rabbits escaped and somehow managed to survive. Another version suggests that workers racked with guilt released rabbits as an apology for the ones used in experiments. And then there's the theory that today's rabbits descended from pets abandoned by tourists in the 1970s. So, what's the real story? According to official records, the school children's tale is the closest to the truth. In 1971, 8 white rabbits were released on the island. But here's the twist. These weren't ordinary pets. They were bred specifically for their hardiness and adaptability, traits that would serve them well in the years to come. These rabbits landed in what can only be described as bunny heaven. No predators, no snakes, foxes, or birds big enough to bother them. An island full of lush grass and no natural enemies. It was paradise. And what do rabbits do when conditions are perfect? They multiply. By 1977, just 6 years after their release, visitors started noticing dozens of rabbits hopping around the ruins. It seemed quirky, but few paid much attention to it. However, nature was about to drop a masterclass in rabbit reproduction. A single female rabbit can have up to 12 babies per litter, and they can produce several litters a year. With no predators and plenty of food, the math quickly got out of hand. By the early 1980s, the island was home to hundreds of rabbits. What started as 8 white rabbits soon evolved into a kaleidoscope of colors, browns, blacks, and spotted varieties. But something else was happening too. The rabbits were losing their fear of humans. Unlike wild rabbits, which dart away at the slightest movement, these island rabbits realized humans weren't a threat. They were a food source. Visitors brought vegetables, pellets, and treats, and the rabbits wasted no time figuring out that approaching people meant snacks. Soon they became so friendly that they'd hop right up to tourists the moment they arrived. And then came the internet. In the early 2000s, viral videos of rabbits swarming visitors hit the web. And suddenly, Okinoshima wasn't just an obscure historical footnote anymore. It was a global sensation. But with fame came challenges. The rabbit population kept growing, and questions started popping up. How many rabbits could the island realistically support? And was this endless stream of tourist handouts actually good for them? This next chapter in Okinoshima's story is both fascinating and unexpected. In 2019, researchers studying the island's rabbits discovered something groundbreaking. The rabbits around the old military ruins had developed a complex social hierarchy, something never before observed in feral rabbit populations. Each group of rabbits had claimed specific buildings as their territories, but the standout was Building 6, a former gas storage facility. The rabbits living here exhibited unique and highly organized behaviors. Unlike the friendlier rabbits near tourist hotspots, these ruins dwellers maintained a cautious distance. They established a system of lookouts where older rabbits perched on higher points of the structure kept watch while younger ones grazed below. Even more intriguing was how the rabbits adapted the ruins to suit their needs. Crumbling levels and holes in the structure served as a makeshift warren system. During rainstorms, the rabbits moved to higher levels to avoid flooding. And in the summer, they retreated to the cooler, lower sections. Essentially, they transformed this relic of war into a multi-story rabbit apartment complex. Researchers were amazed when they witnessed what they called the changing of the guard. At set intervals, the rabbits would shift positions in a coordinated way, some heading to feeding areas while others took over lookout duties. This level of social organization challenged everything scientists thought they knew about feral rabbit behavior. But the surprises didn't stop there. Using thermal cameras, researchers studied the rabbits' nocturnal activities and discovered a sophisticated warning system. When predatory birds approached at night, lookout rabbits would thump their feet in distinct patterns. The vibrations traveled throughout the concrete ruins, effectively alerting the entire colony. It was like the ruins had become an amplifier for their signals, enhancing their survival strategy. Even more surprising, this rabbit ingenuity wasn't just helping their colony, it was helping preserve the ruins themselves. Initially, preservationists worried that the rabbits' constant movement and burrowing might damage the foundations, but it turned out their activity actually maintained drainage patterns, preventing water damage and protecting the structure from further decay. These rabbits had inadvertently become stewards of the very buildings that once symbolized destruction. This discovery raised profound questions about animal adaptation. How had these rabbits, descendants of domestic laboratory animals, developed such sophisticated survival tactics in just a few generations? And what does their story tell us about the resilience of life in the face of humanity's darkest moments? It's a fascinating example of how nature doesn't just survive. It finds remarkable ways to thrive, even in the shadows of history. By 2014, Okinoshima had fully transformed into a tourist hotspot. Over 100,000 visitors poured in each year, thanks to viral videos and social media posts of rabbit swarms chasing tourists. But with this newfound fame came some unexpected challenges. First, there was the food issue. Tourists brought so much food that many rabbits abandoned their natural diet of grass and plants. Instead, They gathered near ferry docks and popular paths, waiting for humans to show up with treats. Some rabbits even became picky eaters, turning their noses up at anything but store-bought rabbit food. And then there was the population boom. Those 8 original rabbits had multiplied into over 1,000. Scientists observing the island noticed something fascinating. The rabbits had formed their own social groups. Certain territories became home to specific rabbit clans. Some preferred the old military ruins, while others hung out near the hotel. But perhaps the most surprising transformation was how the rabbits rewrote the island's dark history. Spots, once infamous for poison gas production, were now selfie havens for tourists posing with adorable bunnies. It was as if nature had given the island a fresh start. However, local authorities faced a tricky balancing act, maintaining tourism while protecting both the rabbits and the island's historical significance. To address this, they enforced strict rules. Cats and dogs were banned to keep the rabbits safe, and visitors were encouraged to buy rabbit food from approved vendors only. Then came a shocking discovery. Parts of the island's soil still contained traces of arsenic and other toxins from its wartime past. Surprisingly, blood tests revealed the rabbits were completely unaffected. In fact, researchers found the rabbits were actually helping heal the island. Their digging and grazing sped up the natural breakdown of harmful chemicals in the soil, essentially acting as furry environmental cleanup crews. But not all surprises were positive. During a 2014 heat wave, dozens of rabbits died from dehydration. The island only has one natural freshwater source, and many rabbits, having grown reliant on tourists, didn't know where to find it. This prompted officials to install water stations to prevent future tragedies. And then there was the too friendly problem. Some rabbits became so bold they started jumping into baby strollers and climbing onto benches, and even onto tourists' laps, all in pursuit of food. This led to some funny but chaotic moments, like rabbits trying to snatch cameras or phones they mistook for snacks. The hotel on the island had to adapt, too. Signs warned guests to keep their doors closed, as curious rabbits had been known to sneak into rooms in search of food. Some visitors even reported waking up to find rabbits patiently waiting on their balconies for breakfast. This remarkable transformation has drawn the attention of scientists. Studying how nature reclaims spaces with dark pasts, Okinoshima has become a unique case study, showing how animals can not only reshape landscapes, but also change the emotional meaning of a place. The rabbits have, in a way, become unofficial healers for the island. Descendants of workers who once toiled in the chemical weapons facility often visit, finding solace in a new life flourishing there, where their ancestors worked in fear and secrecy. Children now laugh and play with the rabbits. Still, the island holds on to its dual identity. While tourists flock to interact with the bunnies, a small museum ensures the darker side of Okunishima's history isn't forgotten. Photos and artifacts inside tell the story of workers who suffered producing poison gas. The contrast is stark. Just outside the museum windows, rabbits hop freely where fear once reigned, and these rabbits are far from ordinary. Scientists have noted their almost uncanny ability to spot food-carrying tourists. They can recognize the rustle of a plastic bag or the sight of a vegetable-toting visitor from impressive distances. They've even created their own society, carving out territories like tiny rabbit kingdoms. Hotel rabbits are famously social, always hanging around tourists, while those living near the ruins are a bit more weary of humans. It's fascinating, almost like watching a miniature rabbit civilization take shape. But as with any growing population, new challenges have emerged. The sheer number of rabbits has led to concerns about overgrazing. In some areas, burrows have caused erosion, testing the limits of the island's delicate ecosystem. In 2022, officials came up with an unusual solution. They encouraged visitors to feed the rabbits in different areas each day to prevent overcrowding in one spot. They also launched a health monitoring program to track the rabbits' well-being, everything from their weight to breeding patterns. Interestingly, the rabbits' impact goes beyond the ecosystem. They're even affecting historical preservation. The old chemical weapons buildings, now protected historical sites, are at risk. The rabbits, unaware of these protections, have been burrowing under foundations and weakening walls. Officials are now tasked with finding creative ways to protect both the ruins and the rabbits. Okinoshima has also become a surprising leader in ethical animal tourism. Other destinations now study the island's successes and setbacks, learning how to balance natural animal behaviors with responsible tourism. Even the Japanese government has taken notice. In 2023, they began discussing official protection status for the rabbits, which would be a first for any feral rabbit population in Japan. It's incredible to think how far these rabbits have come, from lab animals to potential national treasures. Looking ahead, the island faces a mix of challenges and opportunities. Climate change is a major concern. Rising temperatures and heat waves could be devastating for the rabbits, which are sensitive to extreme heat. Plans are underway to add more shaded areas and water stations to help them cope. Then there's the question of tourism. While it supports the island's economy and helps care for the rabbits, there's growing concern about how many visitors the island can sustain before it starts impacting the rabbits' well-being. Some experts suggest introducing a daily visitor limit, much like other environmentally sensitive destinations. Despite these hurdles, Okinoshima remains an inspiring symbol of transformation. What was once a place of destruction has become a sanctuary for life. The rabbits didn't just multiply. They've helped rewrite the story of this island, turning it into a beacon of peace and renewal. There's something poetic about it. Gentle creatures reclaiming a place once dedicated to war. Every baby rabbit born on the island adds a new chapter to this story of healing. From just 8 laboratory rabbits, they've created a thriving population and turned a dark legacy into something hopeful. Standing on the shores of Okinoshima today, watching hundreds of rabbits hop freely across a land once shadowed by fear, it's hard not to feel a sense of hope. If nature can transform this place so completely, imagine the other wounds it could heal. The story of Okinoshima isn't just about rabbits, it's about redemption. Sometimes the best way to overcome a dark past is by filling it with new life. Thanks for coming along on this journey from chemical weapons to bunny paradise. It's proof that even in the darkest corners of history, nature has the power to write a brighter future. We'll see you later.